five books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. A new translation with introductions, commentary, and notes by Everett Fox. Now Yahweh was seen by him by the oaks of Mamre, as he was sitting at the entrance to his tent at the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and saw, here, 3 men standing over against him. When he saw them, he ran to meet them from the entrance to his tent and bowed to the earth, and said, My lords, pray if I have found favor in your eyes. Pray, do not pass by your servant. Pray, let a little water be fetched, then wash your feet and recline under the tree. Let me fetch a bit of bread, that you may refresh your hearts. Then afterward you may pass on. For you have, after all, passed your servant's way. They said, Do thus as you have spoken. Abraham hastened into his tent to Sarah, and said, Make haste, 3 measures of choice flour, knead it, make bread cakes. Abraham ran to the oxen. He fetched a young ox, tender and fine, and gave it to a serving lad, that he might hasten to make it ready. Then he fetched cream and milk and the young ox that he had made ready, and placed it before them. Now he stood over against them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, Where is Sarah, your wife? He said, Here in the tent. Now he said, I will return to you when time revives, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. And Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in days. The way of women had ceased for Sarah. Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have become worn, is there to be pleasure for me? And my Lord is old? But Yahweh said to Abraham, Now why does Sarah laugh and say, Shall I really give birth now that I am old? Is anything beyond Yahweh? At that set time I will return to you, when time revives, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah pretended otherwise, saying, No, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. But he said, No, indeed you laughed. The men arose from there, and looked down upon the face of Sodom. And Abraham went with them to escort them. Now Yahweh had said to himself, Shall I cover up from Abraham what I am about to do? For Abraham is to become a great nation and mighty, and all the nations of the earth will find blessing through him. Indeed, I have known him, in order that he may charge his sons and his household after him. They shall keep the way of Yahweh, to do what is right and just, in order that Yahweh may bring upon Abraham what he spoke concerning him. So Yahweh said, The outcry in Sodom and Amorah, how great it is, and their sin, how exceedingly heavily it weighs. Now let me go down and see if they have done according to its cry that has come to me, destruction. And if not, I wish to know. The men turned from there and went toward Sodom. But Abraham still stood in the presence of Yahweh. Abraham came close and said, Will you really sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? Perhaps there are 50 innocent within the city. Will you really sweep it away? Will you not bear with the place because of the 50 innocent that are in its midst? Heaven forbid for you to do a thing like this, to deal death to the innocent along with the guilty. That it should come about, like the innocent, like the guilty. Heaven forbid for you. The judge of all the earth, will he not do what is just? Yahweh said, If I find in Sodom 50 innocent within the city, I will bear with the whole place for their sake. Abraham spoke up and said, Now pray, I have ventured to speak to my Lord, and I am but earth and ashes. Perhaps of the 50 innocent, 5 will be lacking. Will you bring ruin upon the whole city because of the 5? He said, I will not bring ruin if I find there 45. But he continued to speak to him and said, Perhaps there will be found there only 40. He said, I will not do it for the sake of the 40. But he said, Pray, let not my Lord be upset that I speak further. Perhaps there will be found there only 30. He said, I will not do it if I find there 30. But he said, Now pray, I have ventured to speak to my Lord. Perhaps there will be found there only 20. He said, I will not bring ruin for the sake of the 20. But he said, "Pray, let my lord not be upset that I speak further just this one time. Perhaps there will be found there only 10." He said, "I will not bring ruin for the sake of the 10." Yahweh went as soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. The 2 messengers came to Sodom at sunset, as Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he arose to meet them and bowed low, brow to the ground, and said, "Now pray, my lords, pray, turn aside to your servant's house. Spend the night, wash your feet. Starting early, you may go on your way." They said, "No, rather we will spend the night in the square." But he pressed them exceedingly hard. So they turned in to him and came into his house. He made them a meal with drink and baked flat cakes, and they ate. They had not yet lain down when the men of the city, the men of Sodom, encircled the house. From young lad to old man, all the people, even from the outskirts. They called out to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, we want to know them." Lot went out to them to the entrance, shutting the door behind him, and said, "Pray, brothers, do not be so wicked. Now pray, I have 2 daughters who have never known a man. Pray, let me bring them out to you, and you may deal with them however seems good in your eyes. Only to these men do nothing, for they have, after all, come under the shadow of my roof beam." But they said, "Step aside," and said, "This one came to sojourn, and here he would act the judge and adjudicate. Now we will treat you more wickedly than them." And they pressed exceedingly hard against the man, against Lot, and stepped closer to break down the door. But the men put out their hand and brought Lot into the house, and shut the door. And the men who were at the entrance to the house, they struck with dazzling light, all men great and small, so that they were unable to find the entrance. The men said to Lot, "Whom else have you here? A son-in-law, sons, daughters? Bring anyone whom you have in the city out of the place, for we are about to bring ruin on this place. For how great is their outcry before Yahweh, and Yahweh has sent us to bring it to ruin." Lot went out to speak to his sons-in-law, those who had taken his daughters in marriage, and said, "Up out of this place, for Yahweh is about to bring ruin on the city." But in the eyes of his sons-in-law, he was like one who jests. Now when the dawn came up, the messengers pushed Lot on, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the iniquity of the city." When he lingered, the men seized his hand, his wife's hand, and the hand of his 2 daughters, because Yahweh's pity was upon him. And bringing him out, they left him outside the city. It was, when they had brought him outside, that one of them said, "Escape for your life, do not gaze behind you, do not stand still anywhere in the plain. To the hill country, escape, lest you be swept away." Can you do that in the other room, please? Thanks. Escape for your life. Escape for your life. Do not gaze behind you. Do not stand still anywhere in the plain. To the hill country escape, lest you be swept away. Lot said to them, "No, pray, my lord. Now pray, your servant has found favor in your eyes. You have shown great faithfulness in how you have dealt with me, keeping me alive. But I am not able to escape to the hill country, lest the wickedness cling to me and I die. Now pray, that town is near enough to flee to, and it is so tiny. Pray let me escape there. Is it not tiny? And stay alive." He said to him, "Hear then, I lift up your face in this matter as well, by not overturning this town of which you speak. Make haste, escape there, for I am not able to do anything until you come there." Therefore the name of the town was called Zoar, tiny. Now the sun was going out over the earth as Lot came to Zoar. But Yahweh rained down brimstone and fire upon Sodom and Amorah, coming from Yahweh from the heavens. He overturned those cities and all of the plain, all those settled in the cities and the vegetation of the soil. Now his wife gazed behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Avraham started early in the morning to the place where he had stood in Yahweh's presence. He looked down upon the face of Sodom and Amorah, and upon the whole face of the plain country, and saw, here, the dense smoke of the land went up like the dense smoke of a furnace. Thus it was, when God brought ruin on the cities of the plain, that God kept Avraham in mind and sent out Lot from the overturning. when he overturned the cities where Lot had settled. Lot went up from Zoar and settled in the hill country, his 2 daughters with him, for he was afraid to settle in Zoar. So he settled in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. Now the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is no man in the land to come into us as befits the way of all the earth. Come, let us have our father drink wine and lie with him, so that we may keep seed alive by our father. So they had their father drink wine that night. Then the firstborn went in and lay with her father, but he knew nothing of her lying down or her rising up. It was on the morrow that the firstborn said to the younger, Here, yesternight I lay with father. Let us have him drink wine tonight as well. Then you go in and lie with him, so that we may keep seed alive by our father. They had their father drink wine that night as well. Then the younger arose and lay with him, but he knew nothing of her lying down or her rising up. And Lot's 2 daughters became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab by father. He is the tribal father of Moab today. The younger also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami, son of my kinspeople. He is the tribal father of the children of Ammon of today. Avraham traveled from there to the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur, sojourning in the Gerar. Avraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. So Avimelech, king of Gerar, sent and had Sarah taken. But God came to Avimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, Here, you must die because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a wedded wife. Avimelech had not come near her. He said, My lord, would you kill a nation, though it be innocent? Did he not say to me, She is my sister, and also she said, He is my brother? With a whole heart and with clean hands have I done this. God said to him in the dream, I also know that it is with a whole heart that you did this, and so I also held you back from being at fault against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. But now return the man's wife. Indeed, he is a prophet. He can intercede for you and live. But if you do not return her, know that you must die, yes, die, you and all that is yours. Early in the morning, Avimelech called all his servants. He spoke all these words in their ears, and the men became exceedingly afraid. Then Avimelech had Avraham called and said to him, What have you done to us? And what did I fail you, that you have brought me and my kingdom into such great fault? Deeds which are not to be done, you have done to me. And Avimelech said to Avraham, What did you foresee that you did this thing? Avraham said, Indeed, I said to myself, Surely there is no awe of God in this place. They will kill me on account of my wife. Then too, she is truly my sister, my father's daughter. However, not my mother's daughter, so she became my wife. Now it was, when the power of God caused me to roam from my father's house, that I said to her, Let this be the faithfulness that you do me. And at every place that we come, say of me, He is my brother. Avimelech took sheep and oxen, servants and maids, and gave them to Avraham, and returned Sarah his wife to him. Avimelech said, Here, my land is before you. Settle wherever seems good in your eyes. And to Sarah he said, Here, I have given 1,000 pieces of silver to your brother. Here, it shall serve you as a covering for the eyes for all who are with you, and with everyone that you have been decided for. Avraham interceded with God, and God healed Avimelech, his wife, and his slave women, so that they gave birth. For Yahweh had obstructed every womb in Avimelech's household, on account of Sarah, the wife of Avraham. Now Yahweh took account of Sarah as he had said. Yahweh dealt with Sarah as he had spoken. Sarah became pregnant, and bore Avraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Avraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Yitzhak. He laughs. And Avraham circumcised Yitzhak, his son, at 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Avraham was 100 years old when Yitzhak, his son, was born to him. Now Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. All who hear of it will laugh for me. And she said, Who would have declared to Avraham, Sarah will nurse sons? Well, I have borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned. And Avraham made a great drinking feast on the day that Yitzhak was weaned. Once Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian woman, whom she had borne to Avraham, laughing. She said to Avraham, Drive out this slave woman and her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not share inheritance with my son, with Yitzhak. The matter was exceedingly bad in Avraham's eyes because of his son. But God said to Avraham, Do not let it be bad in your eyes concerning the lad, and concerning your slave woman. In all that Sarah says to you, hearken to her voice. For it is through Yitzhak that seed will be called by your name. But also the son of the slave woman, a nation will I make of him, for he too is your seed. Avraham started early in the morning. He took some bread and a skin of water, and gave them to Hagar, placing them upon her shoulder, together with the child, and sent her away. She went off and roamed in the wilderness of Beersheba. Now when the water in the skin was at an end, she cast the child under one of the bushes, and went and sat by herself at a distance, as far away as a bow shot. For she said to herself, Let me not see the child die. So she sat at a distance, and lifted up her voice, and wept. But God heard the voice of the lad. God's messenger called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, What ails you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has hearkened to the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and grasp him with your hand, for a great nation will I make of him. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went, filled the skin with water, and gave the lad to drink. And God was with the lad as he grew up. He settled in the wilderness and became an archer, a bowman. He settled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife from the land of Egypt. It was at about that time that Avimelech, together with Pichol, the commander of his army, said to Avraham, God is with you in all that you do, so now swear to me here by God, if you should ever deal falsely with me, with my progeny, and my posterity. Rather faithfully as I have dealt with you, deal with me, and with the land in which you have sojourned. Avraham said, I so swear. But Avraham rebuked Avimelech, because of a well of water that Avimelech's servants had seized. Avimelech said, I do not know who did this thing, nor have you ever told me, nor have I heard of it apart from today. So Avraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Avimelech, and the two of them cut a covenant. Then Avraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock aside. Avimelech said to Avraham, What mean these 7 ewe lambs that you have set aside? He said, Indeed, these 7 ewe lambs you should take from my hand, so that they may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, well of the 7, swearing. For there the two of them swore an oath. Thus they cut a covenant in Beersheba. Then Avimelech and Pichol, the commander of his army, arose and returned to the land of the Philistines. Now he planted a tamarisk in Beersheba, and there he called out the name, Yahweh, God of the ages. And Avraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines for many days. Now, after these events, it was that God tested Avraham, and said to him, Avraham. He said, Here I am. He said, Pray, take your son, your only one, whom you love, Yitzhak, and go you forth to the land of Moriah, seeing, and offer him up there as an offering up upon one of the mountains, that I will tell of you. Avraham started early in the morning. He saddled his donkey. He took his 2 serving lads with him, and Yitzhak, his son. He split wood for the offering up, and arose and went to the place that God had told him of. On the 3rd day, Avraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Avraham said to his lads, You stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go yonder. We will bow down and then return to you. Avraham took the wood for the offering up. He placed them upon Yitzhak, his son. In his hand he took the fire and the knife. Thus the two of them went together. Yitzhak said to Abraham his father, he said, Father, he said, Here I am, my son. He said, Here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the offering up? Abraham said, God will see for himself to the lamb for the offering up, my son. Thus the two of them went together. They came to the place that God had told him of. There Abraham built the slaughter site and arranged the wood and bound Yitzhak his son, and placed him on the slaughter site atop the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand. He took the knife to slay his son. But Yahweh's messenger called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham! He said, Here I am. He said, Do not stretch out your hand against the lad. Do not do anything to him. For now I know that you are in awe of God. You have not withheld your son, your only one, from me. Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw, there, a ram caught behind in the thicket by its horns. Abraham went. He took the ram and offered it up as an offering up in place of his son. Abraham called the name of that place Yahweh sees. As the saying is today, on Yahweh's mountain it is seen. Now Yahweh's messenger called to Abraham a second time from heaven, and said, By myself I swear, Yahweh's utterance. Indeed, because you have done this thing, have not withheld your son, your only one. Indeed, I will bless you. Bless you. I will make your seed many. Yes, many. Like the stars of the heavens, and like the sand that is on the shore of the sea. Your seed shall inherit the gate of their enemies. All the nations of the earth shall enjoy blessing through your seed, in consequence of your hearkening to my voice. Abraham returned to his lads. They arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Now after these events it was that it was told to Abraham, saying, Here, Milcah too has borne sons to Nahor, your brother, Uz his firstborn, and Buz his brother, Kemuel, father of Aram, and Chesed, Hazo, Bildash, Yidlaf, and Betuel. Now Betuel begot Rivkah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine. Her name was Reumah, bore 2, Teva, Gaham, Tahash, and Ma'achah.